There's a strange kind of power in not saying everything you know, in watching a room fill with noise while you sip your coffee in silence, in letting another person think they've won just so you can understand how they play the game. This isn't weakness. This isn't fear. It's strategy. And no philosopher captured this better than Arthur Schopenhauer. While most people know him as a pessimist, a man who believed life was suffering and desire a trap, what they miss is his razor-sharp insight into human behavior. Schopenhauer didn't just study the nature of suffering, he studied the nature of conflict, of manipulation, of the subtle ways we assert or lose control over others. And one of his most profound, most overlooked lessons is this: the most intelligent people often pretend to be less intelligent than they are. Not because they doubt their intellect, but because they understand its power. And they understand that power is most effective when it's invisible. Let's go deeper. We live in a culture that rewards visibility. Everyone wants to prove they're right. Everyone wants to be the smartest in the room, the loudest, the most impressive. But in doing so, we reveal our cards. We show our hand before the game even begins. Schopenhauer, however, believed that true mastery lies in restraint. In one of his most fascinating essays, The Art of Being Right, he outlines 38 ways people try to win arguments, not by truth, but by tactics. And the most powerful tactic of all, feigning ignorance. Because when you act like you don't know, people underestimate you. They speak more freely. They reveal their assumptions. And in that space, you see everything. You see what motivates them, what they fear, what they're hiding. And when the time comes, you strike, not with emotion, but with precision. Like a chess master who's 5 moves ahead before the opponent even realizes it.
Click subscribe to this channel to get more profound insights.
This isn't about deception for its own sake. It's about timing. Think about the last time you tried to correct someone too early in a conversation. What happened? Did they thank you for your insight? Or did they double down, get defensive, shut down the conversation completely? Schopenhauer would argue that most people are not rational truth seekers, they're ego seekers. They don't want truth. They want to win. And when you challenge them too soon, too directly, you trigger their pride. You create resistance. But when you pretend not to know, when you ask questions instead of making declarations, you bypass their defenses. You guide them to the truth, without them even realizing it. And when they finally arrive, they think they did it themselves. That's the art. That's the mastery. That's the deeply philosophical, surprisingly practical wisdom Schopenhauer gives us. Don't win the argument, win the person. Now let's flip the mirror. Why do we so often feel the need to prove ourselves? Why does someone else's ignorance make us feel like we have to correct them immediately and completely? Is it because we want to help? Or is it because our own ego feels threatened by being misunderstood? Schopenhauer would say that our suffering isn't just from the world, it's from our will. Our constant need to assert, to dominate, to be seen as right. He believed that peace comes not from control, but from letting go of that will. And in the realm of the intellect, that means letting others be wrong sometimes, letting them talk, letting them believe they're in control until they aren't. This isn't submission, it's strategy. The strongest mind doesn't need to win every argument. It needs to understand which arguments matter and which are just noise. So here's the real question. Would you rather be right or effective? Would you rather prove your intelligence or use it to shape the world around you? That's the dark lesson Schopenhauer leaves us with. That sometimes the smartest move is to say nothing, to smile, to observe, to ask one more question instead of offering one more opinion. Because in that stillness, in that restraint, you create space for truth to emerge, not as a weapon, but as a revelation. And people don't resent revelations the way they resent corrections. They might not even know it came from you. But that's the point. You don't need the credit. You need the clarity. The power not to dominate others, but to navigate through them like wind through trees. Unseen, unstoppable, undeniable. The silent blade, how subtle intelligence cuts deeper than argument, subtlety. That's the word most people overlook when they think of intelligence. We associate intelligence with speed, with sharp comebacks, with dominance in debate. But Schopenhauer forces us to reconsider that. He reveals a different kind of power, one that doesn't bark, doesn't demand, doesn't need to be validated. This is the silent blade, a form of intelligence so precise, so well calibrated, it lets others collapse under their own weight, not because it overwhelms them, but because it withdraws. Think about this: when someone is speaking nonsense, do you correct them immediately, or do you let them keep talking? Because if you wait long enough, they often expose themselves. That's what Schopenhauer understood. That truth, when left alone, has gravity. And lies, when left alone, eventually unravel. The wise don't rush to catch the liar. They build the silence in which the liar trips over his own words. Let's put this into real-life terms. Imagine you're in a meeting, and someone is confidently presenting a flawed idea. You know it's wrong. You know the data contradicts them. The instinct is to raise your hand, correct them, assert your superiority. But what happens if you don't? What if you wait? What if you ask them to elaborate? What if you say, "That's interesting. Can you walk us through how you arrived at that conclusion?" Now you've done something brilliant. You've not only exposed the weakness in their thinking, you've done it without ever attacking them. They will either realize their mistake on their own, or the group will see it unfold organically. Either way, you win the moment, not with force, but with structure. That's the silent blade, and it cuts far deeper than the loudest voice in the room. Why does this work so well? Because people remember how you make them feel more than what you say. If you make someone feel inferior, they'll resist you, even if you're right. But if you make them feel heard, they open up, they think more clearly, they trust you. And when the truth finally lands, it lands without friction. That's why Schopenhauer's philosophy is so dangerous in the best way. It teaches us to master not just what we say, but when to say it, and more importantly, when not to. This is the art of intellectual war without violence. It's the moment when you stop trying to win the conversation and start designing the conditions in which the truth wins itself. And the best part, you walk away clean. You don't carry the emotional weight of conflict. You don't burn bridges. You don't feed the fire. You redirect it. Here's a question you may have never asked yourself. Why do I talk when I do? Is it to share value or to protect my image? Is it to contribute or to control? If we're honest, most of the time we talk too soon because we're afraid of silence. We think silence means weakness. But Schopenhauer believed the opposite. He saw silence as strength. A moment of silence is a moment of power. It's a test of who needs attention and who doesn't, who can observe and who always needs to assert. And in that gap, in that pause, the real dynamics of power are revealed. To pretend ignorance is not to be ignorant, it's to manage perception, and perception is the master key of influence. If people see you as a threat, they'll resist you. If people see you as harmless, they'll expose themselves. And that's when you move, not out of ego, but out of timing. So the next time you enter a room, a debate, a conversation, try this. Say less. Ask more. Let others speak. Let them reveal their minds. And when you finally speak, speak with purpose, not pressure. Speak like someone who already knows the truth, but doesn't need to flaunt it. Like someone who doesn't need to win the moment, because they're playing a longer game. That's the Schopenhauer method. That's the silent blade. And it's not just a tactic, it's a way of being, a way of thinking, a way of walking through the world so sharp, so steady, so intentional, that nothing can shake you. Not lies, not noise, not even ignorance. Because you don't need to fight to prove your intelligence. You just need to know where to aim it. The mask of the mind, why hidden genius moves the world. In a world that screams for attention, hiding your genius might sound like a mistake. But what if that's exactly why it works? What if the most powerful kind of intelligence is not the one that demands the spotlight, but the one that designs the stage? Schopenhauer understood something we often forget. Visibility creates vulnerability. The moment you show all your cards, you give the world a blueprint to defeat you. That's why he believed in masking your intellect, not to deceive, but to protect, to observe, to adapt, and to strike only when the time is right. He knew that when you act like you know everything, people challenge you. But when you act like you know less than you do, they reveal themselves. And in that revelation, you gain more than knowledge. You gain leverage, because now you don't just see the surface, you see the machinery behind it. Let's look at how this plays out in the real world. The greatest strategists in history didn't announce their power. They concealed it. They let others underestimate them. They used the mask of ignorance as cover, a way to move freely while others expose their intentions. Think about it. The loudest person in the room is rarely the one in control. The one in control is usually the quietest, the one listening, the one asking the right questions. They're not trying to win arguments. They're designing outcomes. And the irony? People trust them more. Why? Because they don't seem threatening. They're not trying to dominate. They seem neutral. But they're not neutral. They're aware. That's the genius of Schopenhauer's lesson, that it's not about hiding who you are. It's about choosing when to show it. This is why pretending ignorance is one of the most powerful intellectual tools on the planet. It disarms. It creates asymmetry. It gives you room to maneuver. Because when people think you're not a threat, they relax. They talk. They make mistakes. And when they finally realize how much you actually know, it's too late. The outcome is already shaped. You didn't need to shout. You didn't need to prove your value. You just needed to understand the game better than they did. And that's the hidden genius Schopenhauer points to, not the genius that dazzles for applause, but the genius that reconfigures the entire conversation without anyone realizing it. That's the genius that moves the world. Quietly, relentlessly, permanently. So ask yourself, what would happen if you stopped trying to be understood and started trying to understand? What if you stopped rushing to be heard and started mastering the silence between words? What if you stopped proving your intelligence to people who don't even know what to do with it? Schopenhauer isn't asking us to play dumb. He's asking us to play smart, to use our intellect like a scalpel, not a hammer, to resist the temptation to dominate and instead guide, to not just win arguments but to shape minds. And the minds we shape the most are not the ones we defeat. They're the ones we influence without resistance. That's the kind of brilliance that doesn't just survive, it transforms. In the end, the deepest lesson in Schopenhauer's dark lesson, outsmart by pretending ignorance, is not about manipulation. It's about mastery. Mastery over the self, mastery over impulse, mastery over the ego's need to be seen. Because when you no longer need to prove your intelligence, you finally begin to use it. Quietly, strategically, effectively. And that's when the world starts to change, not because you forced it, but because you understood it. And then you moved it from the inside. That is how hidden genius moves the world. That is how silence becomes a weapon. And that is why Schopenhauer's lesson, dark as it may seem, is actually a blueprint, not just for survival, but for subtle, unstoppable influence.